is to avoid issues like this. So this, as you could see, is a real project. I'm not gonna mention the name of the city where it is because it's a bit embarrassing. So that's to avoid issues like this or to avoid problems like this. This actually is really funny. I saw this on LinkedIn a few years back, and the caption was pretty interesting. The caption of this picture said, "Don't worry about the structural integrity of the building. The plumbing would always work." And to avoid issues like this is actually recent. One of my customers sent me this photograph recently. Now, one of the most important thing that I always tell people is that the technology can only do so much for you. Technology can only take you to a certain stage, but the technology can't be idiot proof. So if somebody needs to stuff you up, they will find a way to do it. So basically the point I'm trying to make here is that technology is fantastic, but we can't rely on technology completely. We need to use our own intelligence to basically make our projects behave better. Now, one important rule that I always mention in my presentations when I talk about clash detection and project coordination is that a fully coordinated project does not mean clash-free. I actually know at least about 4 or 5 of these projects where somebody signed a BIM contract saying, "Oh yeah, we'll deliver a fully coordinated model," and did not read the fine prints, which meant they wanted the clash-free model as well. So fully coordinated model does not mean clash-free. It means clashes detected and reviewed. A very good example is valid penetrations for your slabs and so on, which is pretty much what we are going to look at in this presentation as well. So there are 2 parts of my live demonstration. In the first part, we are going to talk about the model coordination setup. So BIM 360 model coordination is a module of BIM 360 suite of products by Autodesk. So people who do not understand BIM 360, so BIM 360 basically is a technology that allows you to take your design data out of your firewall and put it on the cloud. So what you're doing is, instead of working on a model sitting at a server somewhere in one of the offices or on your local machine, you have that model or the BIM data sitting on the cloud, which means that you can access that BIM data from anywhere in the world. You could access it from a cafe or working from home or whatever it is, especially in this COVID situation. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is to activate BIM 360 model coordination service. I'm not getting into the details of setting up BIM 360 projects because that's a discussion for another day. We've gone past that for this presentation. We are going to talk about activating BIM 360 model coordination service. So what is model coordination service? Model coordination is a clash detection module that runs automated clashes on the models hosted on BIM 360. So the models that are hosted on BIM 360, this module can then run automated clashes. Now the key here is automated clashes, which means that all we are doing is uploading the models or hosting the models on BIM 360, and this module, which is model coordination, takes over from there and then shows us the clashes between different discipline models. The next thing that we're going to talk about is setting up Revit models for automatic clashes. Now, because model coordination module does automated clashes, we can't just throw a model there and say, all right, let's find out how many clashes we have. What we got to do is to set up the model to make sure that we create what we call as 3D views that have the elements that we do not want to include in clashes turned off. A good example is flexible ducts. So if I've got a mechanical model, or if I've got a single federated MEP model, I might want to turn off the visibility of flex ducts, because flex ducts, by the virtue of their name, they are flexible. So I don't want to include them in clash tests. So that way we can set up our Revit models for those automated clashes by creating these views. The next thing that I'll do is I'll show you how the model coordination interface looks like, and then we'll get into more details where we'll look at the clashes, we'll assign issues, and then look at how to resolve them. So with this, I'm going to get straight into my Chrome window. So this is my BIM 360 interface. Currently, I'm logged in as project admin in my Chrome window. So I'm looking at this from the browser side. For me to be able to activate the BIM 360 model coordination service, I need project admin permissions. So for this project, which is called Medical Center, I have already activated model coordination service. Basically, the concept is that we activate the service, which means that then we can assign access to this service to the users. Now, important thing is that model coordination is an additional subscription on top of your normal BIM 360 subscription, which means that you do not want to get access to model coordination to everybody in the project. You could be working on a decent sized project with about 200 people on it. You don't want to subscribe to 200 licenses. What we do is we assign the model coordination service only to what we call as discipline leads. So for example, the discipline lead of architecture, discipline lead of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, hydraulics, fire, structure, and so on. So that way, the discipline leads would actually look at the clashes, and then they can assign clashes to their team members. Now, once the clashes are assigned to the team members, they do not need access to this service. They would normally go into the BIM 360 document management interface and then action the issues there, and which is what I'm going to show you. That's why I've got this Firefox window. In the Firefox window, I'm actually logged in as a regular user, and I've got no access to the model coordination service. So that's the first step. We activate the model coordination service. And the next step is to set up our Revit models. Now, this is a BIM 360 design enabled project. What that means is that this is a project in which I've got different disciplines. So I've got architecture discipline, mechanical discipline, electrical, plumbing. So mechanical, electrical, plumbing is in the same model. And then we've got structure. So if I go into my document management interface, I can see the folders for architecture, MEP, and structure. Now, the best part of BIM 360 design is each of these disciplines can only see their own folders. They can't see anything else, which means that the data is actually pretty secure. Unless I share my models with anybody else, they can't see anything. The reason I can see everything is because I'm the project admin. But if I'm logged in as, for example, the architect, then I would only be able to see the architecture folder. I will see the MEP folder. I won't see the structure folder. So the whole idea is that the data is pretty secure, which means that nobody is going to get into my model and modify it. So if I go into Revit now, I've already opened this model, which is the MEP model. As I mentioned, for this particular project, I've got a single federated mechanical, electrical, plumbing models. So what we do here is, if I want to run clashes of the entire MEP model with structure, I can simply create one view in which I've got all the three services. But again, in this view, what I've done is I have turned off the visibility of flex ducts. The additional thing that I've done is I also want to individually see clashes with electrical and plumbing as well, along with mechanical. So I've created a separate 3D view called 3D mechanical. When I go to this particular view, in this case, I'm only seeing mechanical ductwork. I'm actually not seeing plumbing. I'm not seeing electrical. Similarly, I've also created a view for plumbing only. So if I go 3D plumbing view, in this case, it's just the plumbing view. It's got no mechanical, no electrical. And same thing with the electrical as well. I've got a separate view for electrical as well. The whole idea of creating these three separate views is when I'm looking at the clashes, I want to look at clashes between structure and electrical only. Similarly, I want to look at the clashes between structure and mechanical only. And because model coordination module runs automated clashes, this is how we ensure that we are only looking at the clashes for that particular discipline and nothing else. So we create these 3D views. Once we have created these 3D views, then we include them in what we call as publish set. So publish set basically allows me to decide what views and sheets would be available for viewing in the browser interface, so in BIM 360 docs, and what views would be used to run automated clashes. So in my case, I've got the electrical view, I've got the mechanical view, and the plumbing view. I also have a federated view with all the three disciplines. But again, in this federated view, I've turned off flexible ducts because I don't want to see clashes with flexible ducts. Now that we understand how to set up Revit models, let's go into the model coordination interface, and then let's look at how the model coordination interface appears. So I'll now go into the model coordination interface. By the way, we switch between different modules of BIM 360 by clicking on these 9 dots on the top left. We call it as module selector. So if I click on module selector, I can go into the document management interface, which is basically my file repository area, which is what you're seeing here with all the folders. And then I've got my model coordination interface here, which is pretty much this one. The model coordination interface has got 3 tabs up the top: Models tab, Clashes tab, and Views tab. On the Models tab, basically what we are doing is we are defining a folder where we are saying that this is the folder where we are going to upload our files for clashes. And because this is a BIM 360 design enabled project, I have used this folder called shared folder as my coordination space. The shared folder concept in BIM 360 design is absolutely fantastic. This folder basically hosts all the released files. So if you remember, I mentioned a few minutes back that if I'm the architect and if I log in as an architecture architect, I won't see mechanical and structure folders. But if I need to review their models, maybe I need to link them in Revit. This is where this concept of shared folder is fantastic. We share packages with each other. So let's say our project says that every Wednesday morning, each discipline needs to share their models with the rest of the disciplines. So the whole idea is that we can then link them in Revit and we can run our services around structure and architecture and so on. So every time a discipline shares their package or releases their package, as we call it, it is automatically copied in the shared folder. And that's why I've used the shared folder as my coordination space, because in this folder, all I see are the files released by each of these disciplines. So when the architecture discipline releases the files, it is automatically copied in this folder. When the MEP discipline releases the file, it is automatically copied in this folder. And you can see the MEP release has gone up to version 5, because every time you release a file, the system keeps a history of your releases. The whole idea is you can actually look at the version history, you could compare versions and so on. So I use the shared folder as one of my coordination spaces. As a result, as soon as I go into my model coordination interface, it straight away tells me that there are 3 models. So there are 3 disciplines inside shared. There's architecture, structure, and MEP. So, Stuart, are you looking at the chat? I'm not sure if somebody wanted to ask a question or anything.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions, but we can do them now if you want to. So Pav Singer said, is there a markup and comments facility to mark up that does not need full BIM 360?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Is there a markup and comments facility that does not need full BIM 360?
Okay, so yes, there's a markup functionality, which is what I'm going to show you in a few minutes. However, if you need to do anything on BIM 360, which includes reviewing the model and marking up, you need minimum BIM 360 docs subscription. Now, you don't subscribe to BIM 360 docs. The company that is hosting the project, they have to provide you with the subscription. So they have to provide you with the license, which means that if my company is hosting the project, and if I add you to the project, you use one of our licenses. But the bottom line is, to do anything on BIM 360 when it comes to the markups and reviews, you require a subscription of BIM 360 docs that needs to be provided by the company that is hosting the project. If you're using BIM 360 Design, then BIM 360 Design is buy your own subscription or bring your own subscription, which means that you can bring your own license, but not for docs. So for Revit users, they can bring their own subscription and there won't be a liability on my company. But all the docs users who do not use Revit, they just mark up the models, they would require a license of docs that my company will have to provide. The company that is hosting the project will have to provide the license. So is there another question or are we ready to move on?
Yeah, you can move on, Deepak.
Okay, all right. So what I'm looking at now is this coordination space that was defined as the shared folder. So shared folder is my coordination space. And in the shared folder, I have got the MEP model. Now, MEP model, as I mentioned earlier, has got 5 3D views that I've included. So I've got electrical only, mechanical only, plumbing only. I also have a view called clash detection, and I've got a BIM 360 design view. And that's pretty much what you see here. For the MEP, you see electrical, mechanical, plumbing, BIM 360, and clash detection. So basically, as you could see here, each 3D view that I create and publish with my Revit files is kind of used as an individual file here to show the clashes. Similarly, with the architecture file, I've got 2 views. I've got the BIM 360 design view and the clash detection view. And similarly with the structure, I've got these 2 views as well. So the main thing here is that we are actually telling each of these discipline leads to set up these views. So that way, the overall BIM manager is not taking the responsibility. It is the responsibility of each of these discipline leads to set up these views. And that is one of the steps that you need to perform if you need your projects to be ISO 19650 compliant. So for projects to be ISO 19650 compliant, each discipline needs to have a gatekeeper, and the job of the gatekeeper is to ensure that the models that are getting released or shared meet the project requirements. So this is actually making taking one of the steps towards making our projects ISO 19650 compliant as well. So on the models tab, we can see all these models here. On the clashes tab, we can actually see a matrix of all these clashes between all these different models. Now, this, as you can see, gets a bit messy because it's now showing us clashes between every view and every model and so on. But this is where we could actually go into this all models drop-down list, and I can say hide all. I only want to see the clashes between the 3D mechanical view and the clash detection view from structure. As soon as I hit apply, I can now see the clashes between these 2 views only. So if I look at this bit here, which means that currently, if I group the clashes by the mechanical discipline, there are 26 clashes. But if we group them by structure discipline, there are 7 clashes. So we normally group them by the discipline that needs to be changed. Obviously, we are not going to modify structure for mechanical. Mechanical needs to modify the location of the ductwork and so on. That's why we normally would click on this here, and it would open the model, which is what I'll show you in a few minutes. It will open the model, and it will show us these 26 clashes. Once I open that model, I can then save that as a view as well. I could save it as a view, which would be basically mechanical versus structure clashes only. Now, this is the best part. As I mentioned, although we have a single unified model for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, but by making sure that we create a 3D view for mechanical, the automated clashes could be between mechanical and structure only. So this is the fantastic part of this technology, where we've got a lot of control over what kind of clashes we want to view. But most importantly, that control is defined by the discipline lead of each of these disciplines. which means that the gatekeeper is making sure that the files that are getting released to the other teams or other disciplines meet the design, meet the project requirements. So that's, again, as I said, is one of the fantastic features of this program. If I go to the views tab, I already have a couple of views created here. So structure versus plumbing and structure versus all services clashes, which is pretty much all I did was I went in here and instead of saying structure versus mechanical, I said MEP clash detection versus structure clash detection. So this view has got all the disciplines together, which is pretty much this current view here, which has got electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. So this way, we are seeing unified clashes between structure and mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Then we also have a sub tab here called assign. This tab basically shows us the issues that we have created out of these clashes. So basically what happens is once we figure out that there are clashes, we then assign those clashes to the individuals to fix them, which is what I'll show you in the second part of my presentation. And the whole idea is that that way we assign clashes to the individuals. Now those individuals do not need a subscription of model coordination. They can actually action the clashes or issues from the document management interface only, because it gives them all the required information. I'll show you that soon. So that's how the model coordination interface looks like. We can also filter the models by contributors or companies or date. We can also search for models here. At this stage, I want to take a quick 30 seconds break and see if there are any questions to it. So I assume there are no questions. We'll keep moving on then.
Sorry, Dean, that is a question. My microphone wouldn't unmute. So Martin, as I said, can the clash detection tool be used with Civil 3D?
Brilliant question. That's a fantastic question. So yes, Martin, at this stage, the model coordination module uses Revit files, 3D DWG files, and the IFC files coming from programs like Tekla or ArchiCAD or Revit and so on. And as a matter of fact, in my case, I also have another coordination space that I've created for the IFC clashes. So in this particular project, we've got the structure detailing done in Tekla. So there's a fabrication level model done in Tekla that is exported as IFC. And I want to run the clashes between that IFC model and MEP model. And that's why I've got another coordination space for the IFC models as well. So you can have clashes with the Civil 3D files if they are 3D DWG files. So they need to have 3D DWG elements in there for the model coordination module to be able to detect clashes. All right, so next we want to review and manage the clashes in BIM 360. So we are going to look at reviewing and filtering clashes. So right now we looked at reviewing and filtering models. We look at reviewing and filtering clashes. We are then going to look at how to manage those clashes and create issues and assign them to the individuals for them to fix. And then we are going to look at how do we review those issues and action them in the document management interface. So what I'm going to do here is I'll go to the clashes tab and I'll say I want to look at the clashes between, let's say, 3D mechanical and the structure model, which is this one here. And I want to look at the clashes grouped by mechanical discipline. As soon as I click on this now, it opens the two models, federates them together. Unlike Navisworks, where we have to do the federation here, it federates them together and now groups those clashes by the mechanical discipline. We can see these clashes here, which are 26 clashes, and now we can also review those models. So this is a really clean and crisp interface here, where we are looking at these 26 clashes only. And the whole idea now is, as I'm looking at these clashes, I can now start thinking about, all right, how do we fix these clashes? What needs to be done, and so on. And this is where our clash mitigation strategy comes into picture. So normally in your BIM execution plan, you would have details as to the disciplines that have got priorities. Obviously, there would be priority given to mechanical over plumbing, unless plumbing has got systems with gravity and so on in them. So the whole idea here is that in this case, obviously, it is pretty straightforward. We have to move mechanical. We are not going to move structure for that. And now I can now start clicking on these elements. It says this is the first clash. This is the second clash, and the third clash, fourth clash, and so on. So the whole idea is I can select these 3 clashes, and I can say I want to create an issue using those clashes. And the concept of issue is I can then assign it to an individual, and then we can have a proper issue management process. So I create an issue, I assign it to someone, they action the issue, they change the status of the issue, I review the model again. If they have resolved the issue, I change the status of the issue to resolved. If not, I change it back to active and things like that. So in my case, I want to create an issue using these 3 items. I can actually include others as well because they are clashing. But the whole idea is if I change this system, it's going to fix the rest of them as well. So I'm happy with these. Let's pick these 3 elements here. I'll say I want to create an issue using this. Now, non-issue is used if it's not a real clash. For example, again, things like valid penetration. So if you were running clash or we were reviewing clashes between the structure and plumbing disciplines, and if there was a pipe running through the slab, which we know is a valid penetration, we just haven't modeled the penetration yet, then in that case, we could go and change them to non-issue, and we can say these are valid penetrations. In this case, obviously, this is a issue. So I'm going to click on issue, and I'll say I want to place a pin. Because it's an issue, so I need to place a pin. The whole idea is whosoever is assigned this issue, they can then go to that pin and decide what they need to do with this. I place the pin here. I can define a title, which in this case is going to be mech ductwork clashing with beams. But the best part is under description, it has automatically included the 3 elements that were clashing. But most importantly, the best part here is it's included the element IDs of those items as well. The duct element ID here, similarly for the second clash, element ID here, and the third clash, element ID here. And the whole idea is when I'm acting these issues, I could simply go to an element based on the element ID, move those elements based on whatever I've been assigned, decide, or I've been asked to do by the BIM managers and the engineers and so on, and then I can easily action that. So in this case, we are going to say, move the system down by 250. I can click on this, and it shows me the list of all the members on this project automatically. So these are all the members on this particular BIM 360 project. I'm going to assign it to this user here, who's actually my twin, who's going to use the BIM 360 document management interface from Firefox. So I'll click on my twin here. And I'll say because he doesn't have anything to do on the weekend, he needs to fix it by Saturday. As soon as I click on create, what it does is it not only creates Sweet grabber. Water. So the best part is it not only just creates the issue out of these 3 clashes, it also removes them from the list of total clashes, because it says you've already actioned those 3 clashes, or at least created the issue using them. So I don't really need to do anything else at this stage. That's why it has reduced the total number of clashes to 23. The whole idea is I can click on this issues tab on the left, and I can look at the issues on this model. And these are all the issues that were created by me. I can click on these issues here, or alternatively, as I mentioned earlier, I could go into the assigned sub tab under the clashes tab, and I can see these issues here. So this one actually is assigned to my twin, who is working on the MEP model but doesn't have access to the model coordination module. So he goes on to Firefox. And normally what we do is we start every morning on this page here, which is our BIM 360 project homepage. The BIM 360 project homepage basically has got all these different cards that I could use to look at what are my pending issues that I need to action today. Are there any RFIs I need to look at? Are there any design issues? In this case, it's straight away showing me that there is an issue that has been assigned to me, which is number 9, and this is a coordination issue. And when I click on this, it basically brings me to the document management interface. Remember, this user does not have access to BIM 360 model coordination module. That's why this user only can view these clashes in the document management interface. And now when I click on this open clash here, it says that this was the title of the issue that was assigned to this user here. Due date is Saturday. And if there are some location details, they can define here. It's a clash type of issue. And if you want, we can also define root cause. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of defining root causes because one of the cards that I can have sitting here could be based on all the root cause analysis. So the whole idea is we can see what are the main root causes. Why do we have all these problems in the issue? So this is a design coordination root cause. I can click on this model now where this issue is sitting. So when I click on this, I can now see that issue on BIM 360 docs in the MEP file. Because this user does not have access to clash detection, this user doesn't see it as a clash, but this user sees it as an issue in the model. So in this case, we can go and here and we can say, all right, so that's where the issue is. And these are all the elements involved in that particular issue 1, 2, and 3. So what do we do from here on? So obviously this user needs to action these issues. So what I could do is if I scroll down under the details, I'll see the element ID here. And in Revit, let me go into the mechanical 3D view. And I can now go and search for elements based on their element IDs. So for that, I'll go to the Manage tab. And then under Inquiry, I'll go and just select by ID. And the ID I'm looking for is 903718. 903718, enter. As soon as I press enter, that element is now highlighted. As you can see here. And that was the element that had clash in the model. Similarly, if I'm looking for the next element, which could be 957200, I'll go back and say 957200, enter, and that's this element here. Similarly, I could go and say 957215. So select by ID, 917215, enter. 957215. So 957215, enter, and that's this duck here. The whole idea is the model coordination module has made it so easy for me to now easily go into the authoring tool like Revit in this case, and then action whatever I need to do to resolve these issues. So in this case, if I need to drop them down or if I need to drop the entire system down, I could easily now go and modify these. The best part is once I have modified these, I'm going to simply sync to the Cloud Central model, publish and share this package again. And the next time I share this package, nothing needs to be done. As soon as I would go into the model coordination interface, which would be pretty much this one here, and look at this clash, it would straight away tell me that the clash is now fixed. So I won't be able to see any clashes between those elements here. And what this user could do is once they have fixed the clashes in the Revit model, they can now add a response here where they could say resolved in the MEP model. The changes can be seen in the next weekly share. Enter, and then I can change the status of this issue to answered. So this issue is answered. The next weekly share package will show the changes. And as soon as I change the status of this user, actually the user who created the issue, they get an email notification saying that the person you assigned that issue has changed the status of that issue to answered, and these are the details. You could click on the hyperlink in the email. It'll bring you to this page here, and then we'll show you that this issue has been answered. And now, when you click on this issue, obviously in this case, I did not go through that process because it takes about 5-7 minutes to do that. So, but if that process was performed, you won't see these clashes anymore, which is pretty much what, if I go to one of the other issues that was answered. So this issue was with the electrical model. And because this was answered with the electrical model, I don't see these clashing elements now. What I see are the elements with the proper visibility, not clashing elements. So I straight away know that this issue is resolved now because I don't see clashing elements. And because these elements are not clashing anymore, I can change the status of this issue. Because I initiated this issue, I'm the only one who can close it. I'll say this issue is closed now. So clashes resolved, done. So pretty much we are closing the entire loop. We started looking at the clashes in the in the model coordination module. We created issues using those clashes. We assigned those issues to the users who had to fix them. They then looked at those issues in the model coordination interface, in the document management interface, because they did not have access to model coordination. They were then easily able to use the element IDs of those elements, go into the Revit model, fix those, and then go through the process of sharing the package, which means that the issues were automatically resolved. And when the user who created the issue gets a notification, they look at it, yes, all fixed, closed. So all the way from detecting the issue, detecting the clashes, to creating the issues, to assigning the issues, to resolving the issues and back, Autodesk, using this BIM 360 interface, is closing the entire loop of clash detection based on our clash mitigation strategies, and then allowing us to resolve those clashes in a very timely manner. And the best part is it keeps a history of all of these, which means although this issue is closed now, I can still go back in here and see exactly what happened in this particular issue, how was it resolved, and things like that. So it keeps a history of all that stuff here. How cool is that? And all this is happening in browser. All this is happening on the cloud, which means that I'm not using my local machine to run clashes and then exchange the information and so on. All this is happening on the cloud, which means we've got a single source of truth for all these issues and issue resolution process. And that's pretty much all I have in my presentation. I know I jammed quite a bit of stuff in about 45 minutes, but I want to open it for questions now. I'm gonna take questions, Stuart.
Okay, so we've got a question from Pav. Can BIM 360 be integrated into GIS and absorb contras, including third-party services?
So BIM 360, yes, it can. So BIM 360 basically is a file repository, and it allows you to upload files from about 50 different file formats, including files coming from programs like Tekla and so on as IFCs as well. However, model coordination module only at this stage allows you to run automated clashes which is what we see here. So it allows you to run automated clashes only between the Revit 3D views, IFC files coming from programs like Tekla and ArchiCAD, and obviously Revit as well, and 3D DWG files. So if you've got any other format like Navisworks or something, then model coordination module at this stage does not run automated clashes between those models. Only Revit 3D views, IFC files coming from Tekla and ArchiCAD and Revit, and 3D DWGs.
Okay, and then he's also asked, how do you deal with teams working simultaneously on the model, resulting in residual clashes? Is the model
That's actually a brilliant. That's a brilliant question, and that's where BIM 360 design is absolutely fantastic. So BIM 360 design, basically, as I mentioned, the model is hosted on the cloud, so any team member can access it, and it works on the concept of work sets. So people who use Revit, they would understand the work set basically is I take the ownership of certain elements and then I start modifying them without affecting the other elements. So that means that multiple people can work on the same model at the same time.
Okay, question from Breely. Is this all done in detailed design phase, i.e. pre-construction contract project delivery phase?
That's an interesting question. So going back, I remember going back about 7-8 years, somebody asked me this question: when do you start running the clashes? At what stage do you run clashes? In the design documentation stage? Do you run them in the construction documentation, or whatever? So basically, these days, the power of these programs is that you can actually start looking at the clashes from the initial design phase itself, and that's the whole idea. Which is pretty much currently this is a design project. So we've got the consultants working on the design, but even in the design phase, we are looking at the clashes. So we are basically allowing the technology to make sure that we are working in a coordinated environment and we can reduce the number of clashes as soon as we can. So the answer to the question is, it doesn't matter what stage you are at, you could use this at any stage of the project.
Okay, question from David Adamson. He said, would you not check the architectural model to ensure that there's no clash with any suspended ceiling level after the mechanical or structures move 250 mil lower?
That's a brilliant question. Yes, you would definitely have to do that. But in this case, I just wanted to show you an example. But ideally, you would have a model that will have the ceilings in it as well. So you could see how further down can you move the model. And again, as a BIM manager, I would actually have to look at the models, and that's one of the jobs of the BIM manager or a VDC manager, is to look at the model and see how much space have we got within our ceiling space. Can we actually move the duct down by 200, or can we move it down only by 150? And that's one of the other things that you would do when you're looking at the clashes between, for example, the architecture model. So in this case, the architecture clash detection and the services model. You would look at you might just want to stick your head in the ceiling space and do quick distance measurements and so on, which is what this program does. It also allows you to check distances and so on, so you can measure distance and see how much space do you have to move around. So absolutely, in answer to your question, you would definitely do that. I was just taking an example of telling people or telling the consultant to move it down by 250 or whatever.
Okay, so Jonathan's asked the question, is it possible to have statistics of these processes?
So if they could elaborate the question a bit more, when they say statistics,